Evolutionism fails to be a bona fide scientific theory because it is purely based on blind metaphysics, while evolutionism is pseudoscience, a cosmic lie. Scientific method established by Francis Bacon, 1561–1626. Francis Bacon was a scientist, philosopher and member of the Church of England. He was an educated man who was unconvinced with Greek science and Aristotle's metaphysics. He promoted the philosopher's principles of induction as the proper method for scientific investigation. His principles of inductive reasoning, known as the Baconian method, requires the initial observations of a phenomenon followed by experiment after experiment based on a working hypothesis until a truthful explanation from all the results is obtained. The Baconian scientific method in a graphical representation. Observable, testable, repeating phenomenon. A logical working hypothesis. Repeatable, testable experimentation. Determine a relationship from the data using first principles. Change the working hypothesis if met with failure. Repeatable, testable experimentation. Postulate a theory. Try to disprove the theory with any and all the evidence. A universal law is established. An example of the scientific method, unobservable, testable, repeating phenomenon. Objects fall to the ground. A logical working hypothesis. An invisible force pushes objects toward the ground. The repeatable, testable experimentation. Drop objects of different sizes and weight from a given height. Determine a relationship from the data. Using first principles, objects fall to the ground at a given rate regardless of size and weight. Change the working hypothesis if met with failure. Objects of different shape fall to the ground slower. A feather falls slower. Repeatable, testable experimentation. Many feathers bound together into a ball fall at the same rate. Postulate a theory. An invisible force accelerates objects at rest to the ground at 9.8 meters per second. Try to disprove the theory with any and all the evidence. The results of the test are reproducible by all without exception. Universal law. Acceleration due to gravity. The blind metaphysical notions of unscientific evolutionism. The emergence of the alleged first self-replicating simple single cell from the imaginary primordial soup. The supposed transformation of the imaginary simple cell into more complex multiple cell organisms is just presumed, i.e., into plants, into insects, into the fish into amphibians, amphibians into reptiles, reptiles into land mammals into ocean mammals, humans, from monkeys, or ape-like creatures. This is only imagined, a story. It was not observed, nor is it observable and is thereby unscientific. The fossiliferous layers does not and did not have the evidence. The sketch of the tree of life shows an empty trunk and branches with many of the known life forms at the tips of the branches because all of the alleged transmutation of species from the alleged common ancestor is not observed happening now or in the fossil record that will not produce the evidence. Agassiz, Pictet, and Sedgwick, paleontologists and Darwin's peers rejected his fairy tale notion based on the sudden appearance of several of the main divisions of the animal kingdom in the lowest fossiliferous rocks known as the Cambrian explosion. More than 100 years after Darwin's baseless and scientific assertions, Stephen Jay Gould admitted, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference, however reasonable, not the evidence of fossils. We fancy ourselves as the only true students of life's history, yet to preserve our favorite account of evolution by natural selection we view our data as so bad that we never see the very process we profess to study. Stephen Jay Gould, Evolution's Erratic Pace, Natural History, Volume 86, May 1977, page 14. Real science is not based on fallacious logic and tactics. The wishful evolutionary process which is out of sight of humans millions of years ago has to be imagined from the alleged common ancestor of all the humans and everything else, i.e. just so story, the bare assertion fallacy and the argument from silence fallacy, the opinion of any individual with or without credentials, i.e. the appeal to authority fallacy, the consensus of an affiliation, i.e. the popular opinion fallacy, argumentum ad populum, the extrapolationism of observable events for unobserved alleged events, i.e. variation within a species is extrapolated as evidence for the possibility that macroevolution, for example the transmutation of one phylum into another, misleading vividness, cherry-picking, and false attribution fallacy, the ridicule and misrepresentation of anyone that rejects evolution, i.e. the appeal to spite, ad hominem and strongman tactics and others, fabricated evidence, hoaxes, artistic illusion, and false claims. All evolutionary papers are therefore the pseudoscience of philosophical materialism, since evolutionism/Darwinism is without logic and evidence based on observable testable phenomenon, but merely the presumption of metaphysical notions. All that has ever been said, written, portrayed on film, magazine, TV, YouTube and such popular media is unscientific and a cosmic lie. All those that propagate evolutionism or Darwinism are pseudoscientists and disseminators of the lie. The lies and liars for evil evolutionism will be the subject of subsequent videos. Philosophical materialism, the mandated a priori. Professor Richard London, a geneticist, confesses the working hypothesis: we take the side of science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated just-so stories, because we have a priori commitment, a commitment to materialism. It is not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but, on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. Moreover, that materialism is an absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. What is philosophical materialism? Materialism is the unsubstantiated and dogmatic notion that nothing else exists but materials. However, raw elements are without sensory organs, a brain, and non-living. Materials do not collaborate to contrive biological life, tools, instruments, etc. This is a scientific fact. DNA, RNA, ATP, a house, a car, etc. do not make themselves. The intelligence of humans and animals uses raw elements to make many devices. Human intelligence cannot use raw elements to make a seed, a weed, a flea or a pea. If the intelligence of humans cannot make a flea, why does the reprobate mind of so-called scientists claim that raw elements did at all given time and random chance? The musical conductor in this video can wave the baton forever at the raw elements, but the materials will not listen or obey to create all that exists. Why the peer review process is null and void due to circular reasoning? The mandated, a priori, framework is philosophical materialism, which is purely cloud cuckoo land based on philosophical materialism. The so-called evolutionist makes all conclusions about hijacked evidence as if evolutionism, or Darwinism, or neo-Darwinism were true. Those conducting the peer review use the same premise by compulsion as cited above. The outcome is assured, i.e. all the evidence is interpreted as the result of the alleged evolutionary processes, and the conclusions are written in support of the evolutionary framework, and the review by peers of the same affiliation ensure it complies as well. The fallacious peer review process uses circular reasoning by coercion. Philosophical materialism, the mandated a priori, evidence interpreted based on materialism is compulsory. Obligation to publish conclusions that support evolution. The membership reviews the papers based on the interpretation that evolution is a fact. The evolutionary police enforce that the peer-reviewed papers uphold the religious dogma of materialism or else. The delusional mind of Dawkins venerates blind metaphysics. Richard Dawkins reverently claims that, without Darwinism, biology is a collection of miscellaneous facts. Children need to learn to think in an evolutionary way, or the information that students learn will just be facts, with no binding thread to hold them together, nothing to make them memorable or coherent. With evolution, a great light breaks through into the deepest recesses, into every corner of the science of life. You understand not only what is, but why. How can you possibly teach biology unless you begin with evolution? How, indeed, can you call yourself an educated person, if you know nothing of the Darwinian reason for your own existence? 2002, page 58. Folks, you judge for yourselves, but I say Dawkins is a certified pseudoscientist from Cloud Cuckoo Land. In subsequent videos let's see who else is certifiable.